Greetings from South Florida. Pete Byrne, WSBT 22 Sports, joined by Tyler James of Inside Indy Sports. Tyler, it's significantly warmer than the last time we did this in the south corner of the Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah.
And I would actually say unseasonably cool for South Florida temperatures, but we're certainly not complaining. We're down here in advance of the Orange Bowl tomorrow. Notre Dame's going to take on Penn State. And one of the biggest games that these programs have played in a long, long time. As we know, the winner will move on to the national championship. We just had a chance to hear from both James Franklin and Marcus Freeman. The final time we'll speak with both of them prior to tomorrow's kickoff. What were some of the takeaways for you?
Yeah, it was interesting to me that it seems like a lot of these press conferences before bowl games become sort of like opportunities for national media to catch up with these reporters. And so a lot of big picture topics being presented to both head coaches, and James Franklin being all about like having opinions and sharing his opinion, and Marcus Freeman being like, yeah, I just do what they tell me, and whatever the system is, we're going to make the most of it. He's not here to make strong opinions about the value of independence or if every team should have the same kind of schedule. So I thought it was interesting, sort of the difference between the two in this situation, with obviously James Franklin having a longer head coaching tenure and maybe having more opinions, where Marcus Freeman's more about worrying about tomorrow's game. Not that James Franklin is it, but that's sort of the I think the perception that maybe come off that way after today's press conference.
Yeah, I mean, James Franklin is far more established in his career at this point. He's been doing this a long time. This is Marcus Freeman's third year. We forget that sometimes because the Irish are playing so well, but if anything, Marcus has been who he's been all along. He's sticking to what he knows and what he believes in. It's all about the football, and every coach says that the outside noise is just noise and we tune it out, but I feel like Marcus Freeman over the last 10, 12 weeks has actually been very good at putting that into practice, and he definitely did not seem to be overly interested in what you would consider the noise. Some of the topics, though, today that I did think were interesting, what was brought up, how long this college football playoff is. Yeah. It's a great thing to still be alive, but Notre Dame is about to play their 15th football game. They've never played that many. Penn State's about to play their 16th football game. They've never played that many. It'll be interesting to see, does this change down the road? Does the season start earlier? Do they change the length of the regular season? Because very quickly, college football is starting to look a little bit more like the NFL.
Yeah, and competing with the NFL, too. I mean, that's why we're playing the games in the middle of the week this week instead of on the weekend, because the NFL playoffs. And so the season is very long. James Franklin mentioned maybe it's worth pushing the start of the season up earlier, so the end of the season's not as sort of lengthy and into the new year. But yeah, it's a sort of a war of attrition. Depth is more important now than ever, and Notre Dame wouldn't be where it's at, and Penn State wouldn't be where it's at if not for the depth of these teams, and that's going to be tested again on Thursday night. So I think it's a testament to what these programs have built to be able to withstand these games, and obviously they're dealing with injuries going into the game. Both teams, one of the best players for each team, Abdul Carter, a defensive end for Penn State, and Jeremiyah Love for Notre Dame, the running back. Like, those guys are probably going to play, but maybe not be at their peaks right now because of the length of the season.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance they probably won't be at their peak, certainly based on what we saw from Love in practice and from what we're hearing about Carter. I mean, James Franklin didn't make it sound like Abdul Carter was ready to go. He made it sound like we're doing everything we can to get him ready, but we just don't know. By the way, I don't know if the noise is picking this up, but we're right in the flight path of FLL Airport. But so if you hear some loud noises throughout the course of this discussion, that's all that is. Speaking of the depth, that certainly showed up for Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. I mean, with Riley Leonard out and then Howard Cross going out mid-game, I mean, we saw R.J. Oben, for one, have probably his best game in a gold helmet.
Yeah, that was impressive, and when Notre Dame needed it most, right? Like, R.J. Oben has, I mean, I think it's fair to say, been a bit of a disappointment compared to what he came into Notre Dame as. But then that's sort of everything is made up for when you have a big moment like that. And certainly Notre Dame could use more from R.J. Oben and other defensive linemen moving forward without Riley Mills in the lineup. And Junior Tui Halamaka played really well and is playing probably the best football of his career right now. And so, yeah, we're talking about guys that sort of afterthoughts. Junior Tui Halamaka was a third string at his position at the beginning of the season. Didn't even play defense in the first two games of the season. So Notre Dame is really stepping up. So credit to Al Washington, the defensive line coach. Credit to Al Golden, defensive coordinator, for coming up with game plans and developing those guys to be ready for moments like this.
Yeah, and it does speak to the depth. I think early in the season we talked about where could Notre Dame least afford to suffer significant injury, and we talked about the O-line and the secondary. Well, the O-line, they had 2 season-ending injuries and a third nearly season-ending, and now in the defense, obviously losing Brent Morrison in the back four, and yet here they are. So again, that will come into play tomorrow, and I think the other place where the depth is going to need to show itself against Penn State is at running back. Now, J.D. Price has been phenomenal all year. I'm assuming that Jeremiyah Love is not going to be his normal self, whether he plays or not. But J.D. Price has been good all season long, and I think maybe Aneyas Williams carries more than we've seen him carry before.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I asked Mike Denbrock about this yesterday, that Aneyas Williams had a role throughout the season. It was a small role to begin, a little bit of third down back, but it's sort of grown as the season's gone on. And then he plays a bit more in the Sugar Bowl because Jeremiyah Love wasn't really playing towards the end of the game. And so now they have confidence in wherever they need him in a game like this, where if Jeremiyah Love's not able to handle more than 5-6 carries, they can give Aneyas Williams some carries and have trust in him. And he's shown not only just a willingness to block as a pass protector, which is extremely important as a freshman. That's something that not everyone's prepared to do at the college level. But he's tough to take down. It seems like every time he touches the ball, he breaks a tackle. And so there's a lot of confidence in him. And obviously Jadarian Price, like you mentioned, he would be a number one running back at a lot of programs. He's accepted the 1B role at Notre Dame behind Jeremiyah Love. And this may be an opportunity for him to really step up.
It's important to note now at this point in the season that these young guys, these freshmen, have played enough games that hopefully they don't look like freshmen anymore. And I kind of want to put the game against Indiana to the side because it was a home game. It felt like a home game. It's not that it wasn't a really big game, but it didn't feel the same as last week down in New Orleans. And we saw some freshman jitters last week for Bryce Young, right? I mean, the repeated penalties, the running into the kicker. I mean, they got away with it last week. Those, I think it's safe to say that Notre Dame probably can't afford a penalty-ridden game again tomorrow like they had last week.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair to say. But Bryce Young probably learned some lessons, although I think, I don't know, the back-to-back running into the punters, like I've never seen that before. And it seemed like Georgia head coach Kirby Smart's like, forget it. He's going to block the next one, so we're just going to decline it and let the punt stand. So I think Notre Dame does like that aggressiveness, and certainly he has shown an ability to get in on those punts, and Penn State has had a punt block this season, so that may be an area where he can step up. But he also lined up offsides once, and that stuff. Those are sort of mistakes that you can't allow to happen. And Notre Dame, even on offense, Jordan Faison got called for an illegal shift. I know there's questions about whether or not it was an illegal shift, but those are things you have to straighten out. And Notre Dame was allowed to recover from those because Georgia had its own share of issues. Obviously, most notably the offsides late in the game on the punt team subbing in and out. So yeah, you want to be as mistake free in a game like this as you can, whether that's in penalties or as it relates to turnovers.
Yeah, and we've seen something different from Notre Dame special teams almost every game this year. We certainly saw something interesting last game. Not necessarily what I expected, but with that offsides, it was certainly a pivotal moment in the game. I do want to focus a little bit on Penn State. We've talked about Abdul Carter. We will find out in less than 24 hours, well, a little more than 24 hours, if he plays. Ty Warren is a guy that I don't think people talk about enough, and for the Notre Dame fans out there, unless you watch Penn State play a lot of football games, he's listed as a tight end. He literally plays everywhere on offense. Yeah. He blocks, he runs the ball. They send him wide. He even takes snaps. I mean, he can play almost every position.
Yeah, he's thrown 6 passes and completed 3 of them, 1 for a touchdown. So yeah, they do everything with him. There's one play, if you look it up on YouTube. He was the last man on the line of scrimmage, but served as the center, and so he snaps it against USC and then runs down the field and catches a touchdown pass. So yeah, he does a little bit of everything. I compared him. It seems sort of blasphemous as from the Notre Dame perspective, but sort of like a mix between Michael Mayer and Tyler Eifert. That's what kind of caliber player we're talking about. He's 6'6". I asked Xavier Watts, does he compare to anyone that you've played against? He's like, no, not really. I mean, he said in terms of teammates, like a bit like Michael Mayer, but he's bigger than Michael Mayer. So
he's 260.
Yeah, he's 260 and 6'6". Mayer's 6'4". So he is a big dude. And he does a lot. Like they're going to line him up all over the place to try to get him the ball in as many ways as they can. And Notre Dame's going to have a plan for the various ways that they try to get him the ball.
All right, lastly, we talked about this a little bit with Marcus Freeman, and he didn't make much of an issue of it, but Penn State has essentially had 48 more hours to prepare for this game than Notre Dame has. And while we didn't get a whole lot of concrete information today. I mean, Marcus Freeman did say that these final 24 hours are important for his team, and they need to use every minute of it. So I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit, because Notre Dame has had a little bit less prep time. What do you think this 24 hours needs to look like for the Irish to be at their peak tomorrow?
I think a lot of rest and and preparing to be mentally sharp. I think that is probably Marcus Freeman's biggest role this week. Like, let the coordinators and assistant coaches worry about the X's and O's. He needs to make sure that these guys handle success. Like, that was the theme of the season. That they didn't do it well against Texas A&M. They've done a better job throughout the season, but winning the Sugar Bowl was a big moment. There's confetti. There's a trophy.
Yeah,
but you got to.
It feels like a finale.
Yeah, it feels like a finale, but it's not. You got to get back and ready to go. The other team has had some more rest than you, so making sure that you're optimizing the rest opportunities, the rehab situations, and yeah, really staying mentally locked in, making sure everyone is aware of their responsibilities, the schemes, and everything that they need to know mentally to be prepared for this Penn State team.
All right, Notre Dame and Penn State will kick off Thursday night in the Orange Bowl at 7:30 Eastern Time. Of course, the winner goes on to the national championship game. What a story that would continue to be. They'd face either Ohio State or Texas. We've got lots more content coming on both of our sites throughout today. Our live reports will be starting at 4 o'clock on WSBT 22 for the folks watching this in South Bend, and will continue throughout the day. Tyler will even be joining me. Of course, there's a lot more on your website, InsideNDSports.com, as well as WSBT.com. But for now, for Tyler James reporting in Fort Lauderdale, I'm Pete Byrne. Thanks for joining us.